Kait, thanks so much for being on the podcast. I'm super excited to chat with you.
Well, thank you for having me on. It's been a long time coming.
Yeah, we tried to plan it around a while. You're so busy. And I guess kind of speaking to that, you kind of went viral a couple of weeks ago. I wanted to talk to you about it. Your Apple reel, which you were kind of explaining like the wax on an apple. So what's it been like after that got like well over 1 million views?
Oh, it's been really fun. It's opened up a lot of opportunities. I've got to do a few cool podcasts, of course, and just yesterday I did a magazine photo shoot and stuff. And I think it's like partially from that video, but also some of my other stuff. But that video started a lot of conversations, which is what the main intention of my content is, I'd say.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I saw on Instagram this is so cool. You were taking pictures by semi trucks and the trailers had you on them. I think that's so awesome.
Yes, that's here in Spokane. There's a wholesale distributor for own produce, and they worked in tandem with one of the warehouses we take our fruit to, Stemilt, and they have a Taste Local program where they're showcasing a lot of growers on their semi-reefer trailers. And so I'm one of those growers that they showcase, but there's about 6 or 7 trucks with my face on them.
That's cool. How did that feel whenever you saw them for the first time? Were you like, oh, like this is legit?
Well, I had just got back from my study abroad experience when they had already been circulating. So I wasn't in the country, but they were roaming around the country. So that was kind of a bizarre feeling. And then, so I got to see them for the first time 2 years ago. And it's just been incredible.
I bet it has been. That's so neat. Okay, real quick, going back to the Apple video, you did such a good job explaining wax on an apple, and it was really well done. It was very educational, and I love that. Your whole goal is kind of showing that, some people think that there's wax that's sprayed on apples, but it's actually kind of naturally occurring, right?
Yeah, well, okay, so there's always the fear mongering of oh, there's wax on your apples and stuff. Or some people don't even know that there's wax on your fruit, or because it's not just apples. There's cucumbers, I think, have wax on them and stuff. It's been a practice used for 100+ years, and so bringing attention to the fact that yes, I'm going to be transparent in the fact that there is wax applied, but here's why: it's because there's a natural cuticle, there's a natural wax that we replace after the apple has to go through a cleaning process, and that's because we have a lot of food safety requirements in the U.S. and so that's why we have to abide by it. And it was kind of off the cuff because I was on my way to go sell a bunch of fruit, and it was the day before Christmas Eve or something. And so I was wearing a really ugly Christmas sweater. And so now 16 million people have seen me in a very ugly Christmas sweater. So
oh no, maybe the ugly Christmas sweater is what helped it go viral. You never know.
I think it actually helps with the hook. People are what? She has tinsel and ornaments on her abdomen.
Isn't it so funny, at least with a content creation game, the reels that you just quickly film instead of the ones you put a lot of heart into and a lot of planning, those spontaneous ones are the ones that go viral, not the ones you put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into.
Yeah, and I think it's just because if you're not as structured or polished about it, people are oh, I just feel this is an authentic message, and they kind of stick around because they feel they trust you more. That's my philosophy.
Yeah, no, that's true. Yeah, I like that. So I make Instagram videos too, and I did one, gosh, 2 years ago, and it was one where it was this girl, and she's like, do you want to know why he's not texting you right now? And I did a split version of it to where I had just built a Lego John Deere tractor, and I was like, this is my John Deere tractor I just built. And it got 1 million views on TikTok, and it got I think 800,000 views on Instagram. And I was like, this is the one video that goes viral. Are you serious? It was so funny. It was a good time. But yeah, you never do know what's going to go viral.
Yeah, the most unserious ones for sure will do it, especially when it's Lego oriented. So that was a good one.
Oh yeah. Yeah, for real. That's hilarious. All right. So let's dive into apples a little bit. You are a 4th generation farmer in Washington State. What's it like working on the farm? I know you and your dad work really close. So what's it like being a 4th generation farmer?
Yeah, right now I'm like, of course, on the road a lot, and it's kind of a slow time. But I love being on the orchard. I mean, I was literally born on the orchard. I don't think everyone knows that about me. Is that like I was
Oh,
born in our
cool.
house? Yeah, like a pioneer baby. And so I've grown up doing like orchard work, like changing irrigation, riding around with dad. The thing about like growing up on an orchard, but like any farm, is like you're doing something different pretty much every day. So like there's a certain times of year you do things, but it's always different day to day, and I really enjoy that aspect. And then when it comes to tree fruit, there's so many people involved that there's like a certain energy that comes with like
Mm,
working with your crew, or like harvest time, because there's so many people working. It's just a lot of fun, good energy.
that's awesome. What's kind of like the quick little history of you guys' family farm?
Oh, I'm glad you asked this. So 2025 is actually 100 years since we started growing fruit in our valley. Now,
Oh,
like
cool.
my family's grown like just farmed for probably 6 generations or something. But being in the specific valley and that specific land, it'll be 100 years this year. So my great grandparents, Roy and Theo, came over from, well, I think we started out in Virginia and then moved to like the Wenatchee area in Washington, and then moved north in 1925. So it's been a long time. We've been growing apples.
I can imagine. I bet the industry has just changed so much by the time they started to now. I bet it's just like not totally different, but very, very different.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I just look at old pictures. So last summer, I bought the original family homestead, and so I've been fixing that up,
Oh.
and it's a project and a half. Don't I'm not I'm a homeowner, but it's not livable right now. But I
Mm.
found so much family history in the attic of that house, and like some of these like old pictures of my great grandpa literally out there shirtless spraying these massive apple trees, and I'm like, there are so many violations of so many different safety rules right there.
Yeah, that was back when OSHA wasn't a thing, I bet.
No, not at all.
That's so funny. So you guys grow apples and also pears, right?
Yeah, my dad was the one who started growing pears, actually.
Okay. Is that process very different than growing apples?
I mean, it's similar, but like it takes a long time to really see ROI on pears. They're a very
Mm.
difficult crop to grow. I think of pears as like the diva of tree fruit. And so because my dad like started farming, so he's third generation, and it was like we had lost a lot of the original family land, which we've reacquired now. But he was working with like along the river, really heavy soil, so a ton of nutrients and stuff. And actually, apples like to struggle a little bit, like they don't like that dense of soil. And so he's like, I'm gonna try pears, and pears did really well because he's like, he didn't really grow great apples down along the river, but those pears they did really well. But it he started planting those, I think, in the like late 70s, when he was just like a teenager, and they always say pears are for your heirs, and I guess I'm one of the heirs now. But it takes a
Yeah.
long time to actually have a pear that's consistently producing a great crop.
Interesting. Okay, that's I like that quote. Pears are the diva of the tree fruit. That's
Yeah.
pretty funny. So like, when it comes to apples, like how many different varieties are you guys growing?
Oh man, we grow Honeycrisp. We just pulled our Red Delicious, so we don't grow those anymore. Golden Delicious, Pink
Mm.
Lady, Granny Smith, Cosmic Crisp, Sugar Bee, Fuji. Yeah, so I think that's what we're down to now. Did I say Granny Smith?
That's a lot of apples. Like, how do you divide it up? Are they kind of like just in their own little different areas on the farm?
We have pretty contiguous land, so it's nice that like it's all connected. But yeah, that's like one
Hmm.
thing that you have to think about is like, all right, how do you structure your outfit so it's easier to move crews, because these all these different varieties have different picking dates. So you're always doing
Hmm.
like starch tests. You have to make sure like the harvest timing is correct. But then if we go from picking Sugar Bee, which is in October, to picking Fuji, which is like late October, early November, like how do we get like our crews over to that block? Are they close enough? So you have to think about it kind of that way of harvest timing, and also like pollination.
Oh yeah, I didn't think about pollination. That's cool though that you can kind of like stagger the harvesting it instead of like having to harvest everything all at once. That's kind of nice. It seems like I say quote unquote it seems kind of nice, but I'm sure it's very stressful.
Yeah, it's like for each variety, there's a certain number of days after like blossoming that you harvest them. I think it's like 140, like average 140 days or so.
Hmm. Okay. Interesting. And like by the time I was chatting with Tara Coronado from California, and she's got the vineyard. She was telling me that like when you pick the grapes, they have got to go directly to the vineyard or to the winemaking process, like right after that. Like, and I know for other like for vegetables like onions, you've got like a long time you can store them. What about apples? Like, how long do you have from the time you pick them to the time they have to go to the grocery store or the farmer's market or wherever you're selling them?
Well, it really depends. Like it goes back to how seasonal ag is. So like one year we'll have a super heavy year where we have a ton of apples, and those can be stored for like 10 months to a year. But on shorter crops, you go through that a lot quicker, and then you start to like pull up fruit from the other, like the southern hemisphere. So it really just depends on crop size and then also demand. Like, are we able to export? Are we focusing on mostly domestic? But bottom line is you can store apples for 10 months or so. I think after 10 months is like their quality starts to go down quite a bit.
Okay, gotcha. I didn't know that you could store them for that long. That's awesome. I assumed it would be like, maybe a month or two, but that's cool. You can store them for up to 10 months around. That's neat.
Yeah, well, that's like probably why pioneers love them so much, is because you could pick the fruit, hold them in your root cellar for months, and then like have them in the middle of the winter time and have fresh fruit.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's not bad. Now one thing I think is so cool. You started this. You started Kait's Crates when you were
Yeah.
shipping apples like direct. So how did you start that? What was the whole inception behind that?
It started when I was, like when you turn 16 and like all of a sudden you're driving and you want to like pay for fuel and like do all that stuff and you want to have a little bit of spending money. Well, instead of like becoming a barista or like working at a restaurant like a lot of my friends were doing, my dad was like, well, we have like a bunch of apricots if you want to sell those, because we had like 12 apricot trees. And he's like, you could sell them if you want to, or otherwise they're just going to drop. And I was like, okay. And so I was just like a week or so before I turned 16, or a couple days before I turned 16, I started selling fruit. And I decided to sell it on Facebook Marketplace, because that's like where in rural communities, that's how you sell things. Like that's how you.
Oh yeah.
Like, that's the marketplace, right? And so I just started selling 20 plus pound boxes, and I'd meet people in town. But the first couple of trips, it was like I had to have one of our employees drive me into town because I wasn't 16 yet. But when I turned 16, the rest was history, and I started doing deliveries around my community and started just building Kate's Crates.
That's awesome. That's so cool. Were you in FFA in high school at all or no?
Yeah, so
Or 4-H?
actually, yeah, Kate's Crates was my SAE project for FFA.
Nice.
They-
Okay, I was wondering because I know a lot of kids that work on a farm and they start selling as part of their SAE or their supervised agricultural experience. That's awesome. That's really cool.
Yeah, no, I love FFA. Like, that's a big part of like how I became what I do. Like, I did prepared public speaking, extemporaneous speaking, parliamentary procedure, all of that kind of stuff, and that all kind of formed me into what I am now.
Okay, now hold on. You were on a Par Pro team?
I did novice parley my freshman year, and then I didn't do
Okay.
because COVID happened, and so I didn't have a junior or senior year competing.
Oh no, that stinks. Okay, that's no bueno.
Yeah, it did suck. Like, I was so robbed of that.
That's no fun. I was in God, you're making me feel really old. I graduated high school in 2009, and my FFA program, we had an all-guy Par Pro team, and it was so much fun. We were all super close. We did so good. We lost at state, but it was so much fun. I that is one of my favorite competitions is Par Pro. It's such a good time.
It is so fast paced and like it's very competitive.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, we got second place. I was president of my team, but freshman year we were doing novice parley. And Yeah, we got second at state, and that was kind of a heartbreak.
Oh man, that's not bad though. Second, yeah. I love it when to me, like, you walk in the room, you pick up your cards on the chair, and then there's like a minute. And I just that your anticipation's building up, it's just silent, and you're like, all right, let's get ready to go.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
the president hits the gavel, you're like, all right, it's showtime. We got to do this. It's so much fun. I miss doing Par Pro the most. That's what I miss most about FFA. So when you're doing Kate's Crates, that's really hard to say really quickly. Kate's Crates.
Sorry.
Oh no, you're good. So in terms of that, like, how hard is it to sell apples like direct to consumers? Is it a really big challenge? I assume like on a small scale it was a little bit easier, but like as you get to a large scale, how hard is that?
Oh, that's a great question. Honestly, so I don't ship my fruit, but I just deliver locally. And like I had to work out some kinks, and I think that's like one of the biggest like learning curves I had was from like 16 on, is learning how to maximize my time and stuff. And so instead of doing like individual deliveries, I started doing like, I put an ad out a couple days before on like Facebook groups, and I say, all right, here's what I've got. I'm going to be at this parking lot from this time to this time. It's usually about an hour or so. And then I say, leave a comment with your order. And then people give me their orders, and it's 25-pound boxes. But I also do mixed boxes, and so I like that's where the headache can be sometimes, is getting those mixed boxes correct. And then I have to make sure I time it out right, because some of these towns I'm going like 2 hours to, and so I have to make sure I leave on time, account for those mountain passes with some snow and stuff. And then I show up to a parking lot, and there's usually a line of cars waiting for me already, and I'll sling like 70 boxes at a time. And it's a lot of fun because I'm meeting the public, and a lot of these people have been buying from me since I was like 16. And so I get to catch up with folks. But I think like one of the biggest things is like, it's fresh produce, right? So there are things that go wrong, or like sometimes people have a bad piece of fruit in their box, or they have concerns about different things. And so just like having accountability and being like, oh, sorry, I messed up. Like, how can I make it up to you? And I think that's how I built a lot of like my brand's loyalty, or like loyal customer base.
That's cool to hear. And I feel like it's also like part of your story. Like, you're a 4th generation farmer, you're selling direct, like you're trying to make your own niche on your family farm. And so I feel like people connect with that. They're like, you know what? I want to support Kate and what she's doing.
Well, and like even around my community, it's like people have grown up around fruit farming and stuff, but they still have a lot of questions and still don't understand a lot of things. So I sell my fruit like right off the tree. So that means I don't like wash it or anything. So it's got like a white powder over it, and that's just like a natural clay that we spray on to prevent sunburn. And so like people look at that and they're like concerned at first, and I'm like, you just wash it off, it's totally fine, like it's just a clay. And I get to like show people that it's a real product. It's been on the trees for 24/7 for 140 plus days out of the year. And it's cute because like people will bring their kids, and they're like, oh, like my kids love your fruit and stuff like that. And it's just fun. It's like, it's a deeper level of connection that I never had growing up, because we were always just like growing our fruit, putting it on a truck, and not really thinking about it again, because we never got to see who actually ended up with our fruit.
Yeah, I think that's been one like blessing when it comes to social media. Like, consumers can actually meet like farmers. And I feel like it's kind of inspired a lot of farmers like yourself to like be more direct and like communicating with consumers and stuff, because I mean, you can't get interactions like this at the grocery store, and stuff like you selling direct to even farmers markets is a really cool way to like, I know we hear this all the time, but I think it's a great phrase, and that's like bridging the gap, which I think has been fun to see.
Like, I always talk about farmers, or talk to farmers, and say like, we have a big responsibility. So like there are fewer farmers managing the same amount of land average as there was 50 to 100 years ago. And so we have a lot fewer touch points. You have a lot fewer people actually out there saying, hey, I'm a farmer, and talking to consumers. So consumers just don't know who the face is behind their food.
Oh yeah, and I feel like a lot of them want to know. They just obviously sometimes don't know where to start.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And like what I do a lot of too is now, or like since I was 16, introducing a new apple variety that we were growing, Sugar Bee. I was going into stores, and I was like handing out samples to customers and stuff. And at first it's like, oh, like, no, I don't want a sample. And I'm like, hey, do you want to try an apple that my family grew? And they're like, that stops them. And they're like, oh, like you guys grow this? I was like, yeah. And it was just amazing to see like the mood change when they realized that, and like a lot more of a positive interaction than just, oh, you're just someone who wants to sell me something.
Yeah, that's so cool. I like that because I feel like a lot of consumers, they want to know, and then as soon as they meet the farmer, they're like, "Dude, I have so many questions for you. I want to buy from you. Is this apple good? Is this apple not good? Like, tell me all the apple stuff."
Exactly. Oh my gosh. Yes, the amount of dinner tables I've been able to captivate with my knowledge of apples and limited knowledge of horticulture.
That's so funny. I like it. Yeah, I feel like everybody's got like Apple stories they have. Which, speaking of that, I have questions for you that I shared on Instagram yesterday. I've got like a list of questions from
really?
like followers and stuff. Yeah, we'll get to that towards the end. But there's some really good questions about apples and even some orange questions in there. So I think that'll be fun. You've also you've worked with a lot of big brands. You have got, which my wife and I shop at Walmart because we try to save some money. You've got like an apple buying guide on Walmart.com, which is so cool.
Thank you. Yes, that was a really cool collaboration I got to do with Walmart. And I think that was like the first time they'd done something like that. And I think they now do it for like meat and other produce items too. So it was like, I was talking to their marketing team and it was like, oh, like this is kind of like, we're doing something different, but it worked out really well and they got a positive reaction from it. And so it's fun. They continue to do that year after year now.
That's awesome. And do you guys sell your apples to Walmart and to other companies like them, or?
Yeah, so the way it works with like bigger stores like that is we don't sell directly. It's not like Walmart has a direct line of communication. Well, they do with me, but direct line of communication with farmers, because logistically, like that would never make sense. And the scale that Walmart has, like produce turnover, you could never do that. But like that's what I was saying is we take our fruit to warehouses like Stamilt or Chelan Fresh, and they're the ones that are doing the direct communication because they have a bunch of other growers that are bringing fruit to them. So that way they have the scale to talk to Walmart and say, hey, can we get into certain DCs? Walmart has several distribution centers, DCs, and then you ship to there. And then from those distribution centers, they have to have enough volume to make it into the smaller, or the Walmarts, the actual stores. So it's a lot of logistics, but yeah, they do buy fruit from us, but they're mostly just buying fruit from the growers.
Right. No, that makes sense. That's so cool. And I've always wondered, do they try to do it? I mean, I know with apples, it's kind of a little bit different, but do they kind of do it per region? Like, for example, would they try to get like apples kind of grown? I'm in Florida. Would they try to get apples kind of grown closer to Florida, or how does that work out?
Yeah, that's a great question. And like, I'm glad I get to share this information because these are the things that I've asked. I was talking to a Walmart buyer and she was like, yeah, we actually have to make sure that we are buying fruit from different regions, because let's say if they were buying all of the apples from our specific region and a hailstorm came through and knocked out a bunch of fruit, then they would be like SOL, right? And so they have to make sure that they are diversifying their different regions so they're able to like provide inventory.
Oh yeah, no, that's smart. That's cool. I've always wondered that, like how do they manage it without making, without buying all the apples from Washington, then something happens like, oh well, yeah, we're SOL. What do we do? Where do we get our apples from?
Yeah, like distribute, like who they work with have to have like the certain amount of volume, and then they also have to be like from different regions. So that's how that kind of works.
Gotcha. And speaking of different regions, also I wanted to ask about this. A couple months ago, you go to like Apple conferences everywhere. You went to one in Italy. How was that?
That was amazing. That was Interpoma. It's the world's largest international Apple conference. It was incredible.
Oh, that's cool. So my wife and I, we went to Italy 2 or 3 years ago. The food was incredible. The people were so cool. It was a good time. I bet y'all had a good time too.
Yes, Italy is one of my favorite countries. I've been a couple. I mean, when I studied in Switzerland for 3 months, and I got to go to Italy quite a bit. But this was my first time being in the Bolzano, South Tyrol region. And so that is like, it actually used to be Austria up until World War I. And so it's got a lot of like Austrian heritage. And so people still like speak like German there, and but also a lot of Italian. But it's a very unique area, and like the food is a lot different than you would find like in Rome or Florence.
Okay, yeah, when we were there, we did a cooking class and it was so much fun. And the lady teaching it said that in Italy, there's no like Italian cuisine. like Olive Garden, for example. Like it's not all
Yes.
spaghetti or whatever. Like different regions in Italy have different different dishes, different types of things that they cook, and I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. Their cuisine is very different.
Yeah, because you have all these different people, and it's like such a small country compared to like what we're used to, but
Oh
it's
yeah.
so diversified just across that small amount of land.
Yeah, it's like I would say a little bit smaller than California, maybe, and then you look at the
Hmm.
United States, and I would say that yeah, they're pretty diverse with their food. Maybe not as much as us, but yeah, it's cool. It's a beautiful country. The food's great. The people are great. Was the
Yeah,
conference fun?
yeah, it was amazing. I got to like meet a bunch of people, but I also got to see some friends that I had made over in like when I was studying the first time. I had met I went to a bunch of farms and met growers and people in the industry, and so I got to reconnect with them. Um, but it was a very fast paced, like, traveling. I turned it into a 10-day trip, but,
Oh, cool.
and there was like, I was in these conferences or these, what do they call it? They call it Congress sessions, where it's like,
Mm.
they bring in experts from all over the world on certain subjects. And my brain was like, I could feel it expanding. But I learned so much about like apple genetics or, different things like that.
That's cool. Is there anything that like the Italian apple industry does differently that maybe you think we should incorporate here?
Oh, one thing I was at Limburg, and that is one of their research centers there,
Hmm.
so South Tyrol has they have like 3,000 different apple growers there, 3,000 different apple farms, because all the acreage is so small on these farms. But they have a heavy incentive to like always improve horticulture. And in one of the orchards, they were doing, instead of spraying with tractors, they had like irrigation lines over the trees, but they were also spraying like fertilizers and like other like whatever chemicals they wanted to. Now easy on the chemical thing because it's not their
Yeah, yeah. Buzzword.
buzzword, but that's like how they were, because labor is a huge thing, right? And so
Hmm.
reducing labor costs that way. And I thought that was interesting. But all in all, it's pretty much the same. The only thing is they're able to do things a little bit more intricately because they have smaller acreage
That
versus
makes sense.
us
Yeah.
having more land. You can't do all the gizmos.
Hmm. That makes sense. That's cool. Yeah, the irrigation lines on top of the apple trees is a really good idea. Like that sounds like it would make it a lot less labor intensive to spray
Yeah.
and to do all that stuff.
But you have to make sure you calibrate it correctly and take into account like so many different variables. It can get
Mm.
really technical, but I think that is something like worth trying to really implement into orchards eventually.
No, for real. Have you seen? I don't know if they do it in apple orchards. I've seen it in Europe, but they have like these autonomous tractors that'll drive through. Like I've seen some at vineyards, and they look so cool. They just like drive down in between the vineyards, spray whatever they're spraying, and it's just so cool. I think they look
Yes,
like a tank.
that's a big incentive in, I think, in California right now.
Mm.
I've been able to test drive or sit on while it drove itself, the Monarch tractor. I think that's
Yeah.
probably the best ones on the market right now. But it is pretty expensive. But like I think in states like California or Washington, there will probably be like subsidies that can account for a lot of those costs. Because it would be great because they're electric. You could recharge them. You can run them from your iPad, and it's not like taking people's jobs, but you can reallocate those workers to more management positions and scale.
That's I didn't know you could steer it from your iPad. That's pretty cool. Maybe
Mhm.
I bet like an iPad kid would be really good at those because they're so good with the
Exactly.
iPads.
The next generation of farmers.
That would be so good. All right. One thing I wanted to talk about is GMO apples. So everybody's always asking, "Hey, is this apple a GMO?" And I'm like, "Well, it kind of depends because there's only a few varieties of apples." Can you tell us more about GMO apples versus non-GMO apples?
Yeah. Okay. So we learned a lot about this actually in Italy. I sat through
Mm.
incredible like dissertations on all of this stuff. So one way I'll start out is like, okay, there's only like one GMO apple that is on the market, and it's only used for sliced apples, like in the little bags, and that is the Arctic apple. And the only reason it's like GMO is because they were going for the gene that doesn't turn brown. And that is also like a natural occurring gene in some of these other apple varieties. So if you slice open Cosmic Crisp apple, it won't turn brown, or like it'll like faintly turn brown. But that's just like, it just happened naturally because the Cosmic Crisp is a cross pollination. But when you look at GMO, a lot of people have fear around GMO because it's usually these crops that they're genetically modified so they can withstand certain herbicides. That's like glyphosate, things like that. But the intention of GMO in apples would be to have a better eating experience, like a better consumer experience, or be able to be disease resistant or pest resistant. And that's the difference, is we're not trying to genetically modify fruit to withstand certain chemicals or herbicides or pesticides. We want fruit that tastes better, stores better, and then is also has less input costs, so we don't have to spray as much.
Gotcha. So I did not know that it was I knew it was the Honey Crisp, or I'm sorry, the Cosmic Crisp, but I didn't know it was only for like the pre-sliced apples you get at the store. I just thought it was just like a random apple, but that's cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah, the Arctic apple is, but Cosmic
Arctic
Crisp
apple.
is
Yeah,
different.
sorry, Arctic apple. There's so many varieties of apples. How many? Like a couple thousand?
I know, we kind of shot ourselves in the foot for that. There's like 30 different apple varieties in like the US market, like actually has a name and that distribution, but there's like over 7,000 different apple varieties worldwide.
That is crazy, worldwide. And I just did a reel today. I have never tried this for my wife, and I'm not going to try it. But technically, apples are a member of the rose family, and so you can buy your Valentine an apple instead.
Actually,
it's healthy.
that's something that like a lot of growers will do. Like you'll go to a lot of orchards, and there'll be like some apple stump, and you graft it, like they've grafted on a rose bush, so you can actually graft roses onto an apple tree.
Oh, that's so cool. I didn't know that. I didn't know you could just graft them on there. That's awesome. Okay, yep. That's fun.
It is fun.
That's so cool. When I taught for a couple of years, I told some students that, and they're like, but you can't eat roses. They don't look the same. I'm like, I know, but that's kind of the plant family. That's how it goes. They're like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool.
They're just very distant cousins.
I know. Yeah, that's so funny. All right. So I think you do a great job educating people online about agriculture. How do you think we can get more young people involved in agriculture? Because I mean, I feel like people are slowly learning that it's more than just like, we say cows, plows, and sows. So like, how do you think we could get more young people involved?
I think it's like, first of all, just talking about it, like showing that there's options. I think like there's a huge issue in agriculture that it's like people don't know how to get started because it's like there's such a barrier to entry. First of all, super expensive to farm.
Oh yeah.
Second of all, you have to kind of know someone to get started. And so if like we can do a better job, I'm like part of Farm Bureau, and I'm hoping that like we can do more things of like outreach of getting more young people interested, especially through the Young Farmers and Ranchers program, where it's like you're bringing in people that have an interest in agriculture, and then also giving them leadership skills and connections so they can do different internships. I love seeing these different ranches that are doing internships, and they like have kids come in, college age kids come work on their ranch. And I think if more farms implemented that would be incredible, because agriculture, you'll either realize you have the passion for it or you don't. And the only way you can do that is through hands-on experience.
Oh yeah, like learning through doing, like the FFA motto, like learning to do. Like the best way to learn is to actually get in there, try it, see if you like it, see if you can, I don't know, bring something different to the table in the industry, because I feel like farming is so diverse just in terms of the people and the ways we do stuff, because no two ranches are the same, no two apple orchards are the same. That's cool. That's a good idea. Are there any like business incentives out there right now that would like to have people come on and do like an internship or something like that?
I recently just talked to one of the warehouses in our industry, Allen Bros, and they actually have like a bunch of seniors that come and do an internship for them, and they get to see everything from like, and that's more on the like just like logistics side, where they're bringing in fruit from growers, and they're seeing like the quality control, they're seeing how the warehouse, like if you ever see apples and pears run on a fruit line, it's a very highly technological process. So kids might go in there and they're like, oh, I really like all the mechanization of this, and I really like robotics, and I want to get into that, because there is a role for them there in that space of ag. And then these kids are they're getting exposure through this internship. They might go to the like storage side and say, oh, I really like learning about storage and optimizing storage for apples and learning how to do that best. And they might find their passion there. Versus some kid might go out to the orchard and say, I really like, working on a tractor, being by myself and doing this type of thing. And it's really, I think that is like the best thing. And then a lot of these kids can return back to the industry. And so that's why I really appreciate these warehouses or other people in the industry stepping up, and because it's not easy to have a bunch of kids come in and invest
Nope.
in them and stuff like that. But it's really important if you want young people to come back to the industry.
Oh, for real. And that's such a good point that you bring up too. Like the ag industry is so diverse, and like people, if you're just looking at it from the outside, you have no idea that you can get into engineering, computer programming, like so much stuff by going into agriculture. Like it's more than just like, I always tell people that, they think agriculture is like that old painting, American Gothic, with like the two old people and the pitchforks. I'm like, it is so beyond that now. All you got to do is like go to a farm and see what they're doing. Like, I think that's so cool.
That's what, even like yesterday I was doing this photo shoot with all the trucks and stuff, but that was at the distribution center. So like it's wholesale produce, right? So I was like, come on, this photographer, I'd never worked with her before, and she was $1.50, but like she doesn't know anything about fresh produce. And I was like, let's go into the warehouse. And we went around and I'm showing her, they've got a banana ripening room where like you bring in bananas and you make sure that they're the optimal ripeness before you send them out to stores. You got like pallets of onions, pallets of apples, things like that. And just the scale, and showing her like, okay, when trucks are backed up into this chute, like this is how they're loading them and stuff. And I think people just have no idea. Like all my college friends are like, you get to do all this cool stuff. I'm like, yeah, get into agriculture. Way better than you can use your accounting degree and come back into ag, but like, I think it's more exciting.
Oh yeah, that's so cool. That's so fun. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, people see it and they're like, okay, this is kind of related. Yeah, it is related. When I was in FFA, I was a state officer here in Florida, and my grandparents came, and my mom's side of the family, they're completely removed from agriculture, didn't know anything. They were like, farming is just so old school. We're going to go to this FFA convention, and it's going to be out in the field. There's going to be tractors. Well, in Florida, like the convention's like a party. It's legit. And they got there. They were like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. And I was like, I tried to tell you guys. So yeah. People have that perception, and then they see it. They're like, okay, yeah, there's much more to agriculture than we thought.
Exactly. And so that's why we need to I'm always telling farmers, like, what we do is so cool. Because first of all, we're not working for the weekend. We are working for our life and our lifestyle, and we actually enjoy what we're doing. Yes, there's burnout in any profession, but I think farming is really unique in the fact that like you're always doing something different. It's really fun to do. A lot of times, there's sometimes they're not so fun, but there's so much substance to it, and you actually get life fulfillment out of it. And I think that's what like our generation's going to be looking for more. It's not just a paycheck, but also that like actually you get value from it in more ways than just monetary.
I've heard a lot about that on various podcasts. They talk about the younger generations, like they're looking for meaning in their jobs and what they're doing, and they're probably having difficulty finding meaning at an insurance job. And then they're like, you know what? They go to something more, and they can work at a family farm, and they're like, oh, like this is cool. Like I'm able to connect to people. I'm working on some tradition. Like, yeah, this is more meaningful.
Exactly. It's all about that work-life balance.
Yeah, for real. All right, let's dive into some questions. So I put them on Instagram. We had a bunch of your followers and a couple of my followers like ask some questions. So we're just gonna go for them. Yeah, there were some really good questions. All right, so the first question: why not oranges? And I have to ask that also because I'm a Florida guy. We all have we used to have a ton of oranges down here. So why not oranges in Washington?
You gotta be tough to make it in northern Washington. I'm like 20 minutes from the Canadian border. It gets cold, and oranges would not do well.
They would not. Do you know what they do to protect oranges whenever it freezes in Florida?
What?
Which I always thought this is so cool. So before it freezes, they will actually irrigate the crops, completely drench them, and then when it freezes, the water will freeze on the outside of the orange and essentially like protect it, because the inside of the orange won't get colder than 32 degrees, so it won't actually freeze. So like forms like a little shield over it.
that's kind of what we do with like our frost protection, because we're always like trying to protect the blossoms from freezing, and we call it frost control because we have our irrigation start going and then it freezes. But when water freezes, yeah, it's cold, but it also has like a hypothermic reaction too, where it's actually letting off heat every time something freezes. So it actually brings up the temperature too.
Okay, did not know that. Yeah, when I learned about that, I was like, oh, that's actually ingenious. Like, we water it to
Right?
protect it. That's pretty cool. Yeah. Yeah, you look at that, you're like, that doesn't make sense, but scientifically, yes, it does.
Scientific, it all comes down to those actual numbers, the degrees.
Oh, yeah, for real. All right, another question. Do apples clean your teeth when you bite into them?
I mean, yeah, like I guess it could exfoliate. Yeah, people are always like, oh, you have such a nice smile because you eat so many apples. And like, yes, actually, it's like, I've got an apple right here. But it's like when you bite in, it does like, it's good for your teeth. But you also don't want to, I'd brush your teeth like 30 minutes after you have an apple because it's got acidity in it.
Okay, that makes
And
sense.
acidity, especially like strawberries and stuff, acidity can wear down your enamel. So just keeping that in mind, or just like drinking water after it.
And going off of that a little bit, is there anything to the story of an apple a day keeps the doctor away? From an apple expert, what's that all about?
Yeah, so we're looking into that as an industry. Like, okay, apples are healthy. There's no doubt about that. People are always like, oh yeah, they have a lot of sugar or whatever. Well, it's different types of sugar. It's not like cane sugar. It's fructose and like different forms of glucose. But looking into, okay, first of all, an apple, super hydrating. Like, it's like 80% water. Second of all, it's got energy. Like, it gives you energy because it's packaged in fiber. It's got that soluble fiber that like keeps you full for longer, right? And then tons of vitamins in it. And what was the other thing? Oh, like, it's for your gut health. It's got a lot of like good stuff for your microbiome that just like keeps your system running better. So there's a lot of benefits to an apple. And I think one of the best things is like, it's like a superfood, but you can have it on the go. You can throw it in your bag and you can have it wherever.
You can have it in your backpack for 10 months and you're good.
Literally. I mean, it won't be the greatest.
It won't be the greatest, but it'll be there.
I wouldn't be proud of the quality, but it would. You could survive.
It wouldn't be ideal, but it would still be there.
No.
Okay, another question, which this is a very interesting question. How are orchards preparing for maybe a lack of migrant workers during the harvest?
Oh yeah, so that's a great question. So for us personally, I can't speak for everyone because every operation's unique. But we, up where I'm at, like, it's pretty much the middle of nowhere. Population like 1,100, and it's really hard to find. It was really hard to find, especially when I was growing up. I remember seeing my parents being so stressed out when it came time for harvest, because you put all of this blood, sweat, and tears, money into a crop, and then what if you can't get it picked? Because you'd have people come up, maybe from California or people locally, and they'd work for you for a couple days, and then they go to the next farm, and then you got to get that fruit picked, and you got to have it picked at the right time. And that's when we started using the H-2A program. So we bring up migrant workers on a work visa, and we provide housing, we provide transportation, we provide a higher minimum wage. So we're paying them over $19 an hour for these guys, plus time and a half after 40 hours. And so we at least have that consistent labor force. But I know for a lot of folks that like are relying on domestic labor, like that would be concerning. But that's, from what I'm seeing, the major incentive is like, with all the stuff that's going on, is to not take hardworking people that are contributing to society out of our communities, especially rural communities. It's more focused on people who are coming here, yes, illegally, but that's not the biggest thing. It's more, are you causing more destruction than you are adding positivity?
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. Shay Myers with
Hawaii.
I forget, Hawaii. Yeah, he does a really good job. He'll do some videos every now and then, kind of explaining like.
And that's where I don't like say anything really, because I'm 22. I'm not the one writing the checks. I am not the one who's seen I have seen the labor force change and stuff, but I also I don't speak fluent Spanish, and I feel like he is way more qualified when he goes on there and he's speaking Spanish. I'm like, go Shay, because you are a much more qualified voice versus just a cute little blonde girl. It's like people don't register it the same way. And so I have my own truth, I have my own beliefs and stuff, and I have my own stances, but that's where you got to realize, like, I'm not the right voice, I'm not the right platform for it.
But still, you've got some really good opinions, it seems like, because you've been in the industry a long time and you see how it works. You see how it works, and you probably see how it doesn't work also.
Yeah. I think one of the biggest things is, like, when it comes to labor, people are always like, oh, you mistreat your workers, or like, I get comments, people are like, oh, you're slave workers, and I'm like, no, these guys are actually, they go back to Mexico and they have, like, and we love for them to have it. Like, these guys are like, we're out there with them. We're like going through the cold with them. They know when the industry's tough and when we're not getting money. Like, I think we've been just like basically breaking even for the last 5 years or so. They feel for us and they want us to do good. They're riding for the brand. And I think people forget that we're not just like the white people sitting up there being like, oh, you guys just do this. And like, it's like family. And these guys go back to Mexico and they have like their own land, and they, like, a lot of these guys are like doctors or lawyers, and they could be making that kind of wage, but they make better wages picking fruit up here. So that kind of just shows you, like, we really do take good care of these guys.
Oh yeah, and there's so much that, I mean, like, the normal consumer doesn't know about all that stuff, like how it works out. Like, for example, that a lot of them are doctors and lawyers that come here, make much more money picking fruit for a season and then going back. Like, I feel like that's not being communicated at all. But frankly, that's not even being asked by us consumers either.
Yeah, and you guys in Florida, you aren't paying overtime, are you?
I don't know. I don't think so.
No, because for the most part, and it should be this way, ag doesn't pay overtime. But in Washington, the last couple of years, we pay overtime after 40 hours. And I was talking to another grower, and he's like, yeah, like, my tractor drivers and my, like, main guys, he's like, I haven't calculated with the pickers, but they're making on average like $7,000 less than they were when we didn't have to pay overtime, because growers can't afford it. We can't afford to pay time and a half, especially when it's so seasonal. So I think that's like another initiative, is like, we need to get off our butts and talk to our legislators and really just like scream for help, or farmers are not going to make it up here.
It's such a fine line between like making sure everybody gets their fair share, like working on the farm, having the farm, but also like not screwing over the consumer and like quadrupling the price to cover all that. It's such a fine line you've got to walk. Yeah,
and rarely does the price ever follow what we have. Like, we absorb a lot of the hike in costs. That's rarely reflected, at least from our side, to the consumer, because the retailers like Walmart and stuff want to keep their prices as low as possible. So a lot of those costs are pushed onto us, and we just have to take it, which sucks. But I know what you mean. It's there's a lot of well-intentioned policies, but poor execution.
I like that. A lot of well-intentions, but poor execution on them. Yeah, I feel like there could be like a 4-hour documentary on just this one topic in agriculture.
Absolutely.
All right, another question. Do you have any aspirations for expanding the farm?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I am the succession plan. My parents did an incredible amount of generational growth. So in just one generation, going from about 20 acres to over 400. That's a huge step up. Yeah.
Wow.
But, and we have incredible land. I'd like to buy some other land that's next to us. But it's really hard to get that money, to get those loans and stuff. Where I'm looking at is diversifying our streams of income. So we've always just done commercial farming. We always just make our money right off of the fruit. But I'd like to do like more ag tourism, selling directly, things like that. And so that's what I'm looking into as far as expansion.
That's awesome. Yeah. So I'm sure you guys saw this, but in 2020, like after the pandemic, I saw so many farms do that, where they started to diversify, and a lot of them either started doing farm tours or selling direct. And I've seen so many people sell direct online. And I know a guy in Dean's Greens in North Carolina. He would sell it, I think, at farmers markets. But then during the pandemic, he started selling to restaurants and houses, like consumers, and he would deliver it like every week. And so that he's got a huge market, and he's been really successful with it. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's like, I love talking to people and interacting with people. And I want to bring more excitement to like our dinky little town, our little community. And so we just recently, like a couple years ago, got back the warehouse that my great grandpa had originally built. And so it's right off of the main highway. I'd like to have like maybe a tap room there, or a place like people can get food, and like, of course, buy some fruit or like fruit byproducts. So that's kind of the goal.
That would be fun. How crazy would it be to open up like a cidery? I'm sure that's a whole different ball game.
Yeah, I mean, it would be expensive if you want to do it right. I mean, I don't think so as much for like regular cider, just, non-alcoholic. If you want to go into alcoholic, that's where it gets a lot more complicated.
Yeah, that would be cool. But then at the end of the day, is it worth it if you're the only one doing it? I mean, that would be a whole like, first off, managing a farm and then starting a brewery would be a totally different thing.
Yeah, and that's where you got to look at it and say, do the ends justify the means?
I like it. I like that. You are wise beyond your years at growing up on the farm, it seems like.
I hang out with a lot of old wise farmers.
That's good. The knowledge is continuing.
True.
All right, and then last question, which I think is great because you're a boss on social media.
Oh, please.
How do you manage like all your social media channels, monetizing them on you when you can? Like, how do you manage all of that?
Oh, it was not healthy for a long time, and I'm getting out of it. But man, like when I was doing full-time college and then also like trying to learn about horticulture and traveling and doing content, I like didn't sleep. It's just like I would just run on like 4 hours of sleep all the time. And I'm learning to like have an equilibrium. I'm 22, right? So it's like you're learning, we're like toddlers of adulthood, right? And so learning how to like balance my social life and like travel and like for fun, not just for business. And so I'm learning how to like delegate and be a better manager. And that's something my dad's always like taught me to do. And so I'm like scaling myself because I'm a firm believer in my social media and it's like making an impact, but I also know it's going to kill me if I keep doing it this way. And so I like just hired a virtual assistant to help me with my emails and stuff. And I'm training a high school girl to help me do editing and stuff. And just trying to make mini versions of myself so I can keep growing.
That's such a good idea. Yeah, delegate. That's a really good idea, and I feel like that'll help you manage it a lot better. That's good. That's good to hear.
Yeah, I'm trying. I mean, it's easier said than done, but my dad is an excellent team builder. Like, I mean, he manages like 65 people during harvest, right? And he's really good at like setting up. He always says, I'm going to set people up so they can't fail. So you think of everything and then you let them go. And he's like, remember that there's more than one way of skinning a cat. So they don't have to do it exactly the way you do it. And so I'm trying to implement those kind of practices in my social media, my marketing side of things.
That's such a good idea. That's so cool because not only are they helping you out, it seems like you're kind of being like a really good mentor to them too. Like you're helping them set you up for success by setting them up for success.
Oh, I've loved the girl who works for me. Like she was helping me sell fruit the other day, so I was teaching her about like interacting with people and knowing how to handle different situations and stuff. And she's 17, almost 18, and she'll be going to WSU next year, which I'm very excited about. But I'm like, hey, I'll teach you how to edit. I'll teach you, because she wants to go into marketing. I'll teach you how to do all this stuff. And then you also can have a job while you're at school and it can be flexible and stuff. And I said, well, and also I have a lot of connections to offer too, because I am well enough known but she can also benefit from that. And then of course, like she's another young chick, and it's empowering as a young lady, not to like be all cheesy and stuff. But,
oh no, that makes sense. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, just young women finding their own like confidence and being able to really like express themselves and like feel comfortable talking about the ideas that they have is something I'm a big proponent of.
Oh, that's awesome. And it sounds like you're definitely continuing that, which is really cool. That's really cool to see.
Trying.
How have you guys been managing the whole TikTok ban? Which I know it's back. It was banned for all of like maybe 14 hours, maybe.
Yeah, it was like 12 hours, 14 hours, something like that. I don't know. It's kind of one of those things where I was like, well, I guess that's the end of that chapter. I guess it's kind of like how you approach farming. It's like I can't cry too much because there's always like the next thing I got to focus on.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, that sucks. But I was like, well, maybe I'm a big believer in one door closing, another door opening. And so I was like, all right, time for YouTube, um, which I still need to do, but I'm glad it's here for a little while longer.
That's good. Yeah, that's funny. It's like, okay, well, I got these other channels I got to attend to. So see you later, TikTok. Then surprise, it's back. So
Exactly.
that's hilarious. Well, Kate, this has been so fun chatting with you. You're doing great things online. It's fun following you and seeing your stories, and you're educating so many people about apples and the agriculture industry. So good on you. It's cool to see you grow and all that good stuff. If people want to follow you, see what you're doing, where can they go?
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you, first of all. And you'll find me as just Apple Girl Kate, and Kate is spelled Kit. But Apple Girl Kate on TikTok, and then Apple Girl Kate on Instagram. And then I'm working on the YouTube and stuff.
Hey, there you go. You should. Oh, I just thought of this. You should do like a scavenger hunt, with those semis with your face on them. Like, oh hey, like
Oh, that
take
would
a
be.
picture, see where they are.
Oh, that's a great idea. Maybe I'll
There
do
you
that.
go. There you go.
Yeah, I'd love that. Now that I know that there's like, I didn't know that there's like 6 or 7 of them, but I think that's enough that I can incentivize people to snap a pic
Yeah,
and
there you go. That's
get a
fun. I
reward.
love trying to find. I love trying to find. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I love trying to find stuff. I had Amber from Cranberry Chats on a few years ago,
Ah,
and then when
she's
her family was on the back of a cranberry juice bottle, I went immediately to the store. I was like, I found it. I know them.
oh, that is awesome. Oh, she's great. I love what she's doing.
She's cool. Yeah, she's really fun showcasing everything on a cranberry bog. So yeah. Well, Kate, this has been great. Best of luck and enjoy your trip to South Africa.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on.